Millions and millions and millions and millions of people, especially entrepreneurs and business owners, are failing to hit their health and fitness goals because of this, the all or nothing mentality. It is single-handedly the most common thing I see that prevents the modern day entrepreneur and business owner from not only hitting their health and fitness goals, but maintaining their health and fitness goals. And I'm going to be breaking down in this episode 12 ways to end the all or nothing approach if that is something you really struggle with. I'm going to be sharing with you from all my years of experience, decades coaching, decades in shape, of how to prevent an all or nothing approach getting in the way from how you want to look, how you want to feel, and how you want to maintain your health long term. And as I've said many times before on previous podcasts, there is zero judgment when I talk about this subject, because you are listening to somebody who embodied the all or nothing mentality for a hell of a long time. And full transparency, I still have that trait within me. When you have repeated habitual behavior patterns and labeled yourself, which I'm going to talk about in a second, for a number of years, it's hard to shake the devil off. And if you are someone who has had periods of amazing consistency with your training and food, and then that's been followed in short bursts, whether it's for weeks, months, even days, with periods where you haven't been as consistent, then you will know what I'm talking about today. I don't believe anyone given the choice really wants to be off it with their health, their fitness, food, because no one actually feels good when they're not training, when they're not moving, and they're eating shit for a longer period than they have originally intended to. So hopefully the things I share today will provide a new level of awareness on how you can break this pattern if it is the thing that is getting in the way of how you want to look. The reason I believe this subject relates in particular to business owners and entrepreneurs, late 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, simply put, we've coached so many of this sort of demographic of client. And one thing I've noticed with successful business owners, entrepreneurs, people who've made a lot of money, they're very obsessive, all-in characters. And that can be fantastic when it comes to growing business, pushing yourself physically, going through extreme periods of amazing discipline. But it can also be a double-edged sword when you don't know how to let yourself breathe or have some form of moderation, or dare I say it, balance, in your day-to-day life. And I just think it's totally unsustainable in particular with your health and fitness. I'm all for going all in. You listen to someone who doesn't dip his toe in anything. But one thing I've learned, especially when it comes to managing food, is that there has to be a sustainable aspect to managing your food, and a more malleable approach with your training and movement when you have business to think about, a wife or a partner to think about, and children to think about, and maybe people to manage to go alongside that. Because, as I've said many times before, what works in your 20s doesn't work in your late 30s, 40s, and 50s. Because when we are in our late teens and 20s, as I elaborate on in today's episode, all you have to think about is yourself. You can usually train longer. You can usually have more time to prep your meals. You might not have had as much money, so you didn't have the flexibility or freedom of choice when it comes to eating out at nice restaurants and things like that. So there has to be a different approach. Okay, let's kick this off. The first thing I believe you need to do if you're struggling with an all or nothing mentality is to stop labeling yourself with an all or nothing label, or someone who says, you only do something perfect. Because the more times you repeat that label, you condition it as part of you. And as the famous Tony Robbins sort of quote statement suggests, the strongest force in the human race is the need to remain consistent with how you've defined yourself. and also how you believe other people's perception of you is. Simply put, if you have got significance, attention, acceptance by being a certain way over and over again, it's fucking hard to shake off. And I know this firsthand. So if you are someone who internally, right now, knows in your heart that you've been telling yourself you either do something all in or you don't do it at all, stop doing it. If you have aspirations of being in shape for not just the next 3 months, not just the next year, but the next few decades. And I think given the choice, if someone said to you, would you like to be healthy and in shape and give yourself the best opportunity of staying on this earth as long as you can, as healthy as you can, with the best quality of life and strong body, you would take it. But you're never ever going to achieve that if you keep labeling yourself with an all or nothing mentality. Because when you label yourself as that identity, your habits are going to be aligned to that identity more often than not. And it's absolutely impossible to build lasting change and year-round consistency with your food, your training, your movement if you are all or nothing. Because when you are all in, you're going to be eating well, training well, moving well, sleeping well. And when you're not, then it's going to be the opposite. And you're going to be forever yo-yoing, and you're going to have this rent-a-body approach, which is the polar opposite to what I'm trying to create with my Built to Last coaching service. It's pointless getting in shape if you can't stay in shape. If you maybe don't align to that thought process, you probably listen to the wrong episode, wrong podcast. Number 2, I think a really powerful way of ending an all or nothing approach is, first of all, to identify an area of your life you are never off it. Why is that important? Because if you can identify an area of your life where you are already never off it, you have clear evidence that you have the capabilities of being never off it with your health and fitness. For many people listening to this or watching this, if you are watching this on YouTube, I can almost guarantee that if you have a wife, a partner, children, basically responsibilities and people to care for and look after, then you are never going to be off it in your career. You're never going to be off it in your business. Why? Because you are crystal clear of the consequences of not being on it. So if you have these traits and you've demonstrated these traits that you can continually show up and do the things you're supposed to do, even when you don't want to, in work, whether it's go the extra mile, do the extra hours, travel a little bit further, investing in yourself, basically do stuff that gets you out of your comfort zone, then you can certainly do it with your health and your fitness. And this for me is so important, because so often people naturally assume with themselves, or just seek comfort in the fact and seek certainty in the fact that they're inconsistent, and they normalize being on it, off it, all or nothing, when in fact that's bullshit. Especially if you demonstrate you've never been off it in certain areas. If you've done it in one area, you can do it in another area. Then thirdly, you need to magnify the habitual weeks and months in a typical year that you are off it. Why is that important? If we are trying to improve our consistency and be more on it with our training, food, or both, week to week, month to month, I can almost guarantee that you would have habitual weeks and months across a calendar year where you have evidence that you don't tend to train as hard or as much, you don't tend to move as much, you don't eat as well. For many people listening to this, that might be summer, it might be Easter, it might be Christmas. This is months and months and months within a calendar. And this is logic. If we are trying to be in a better position with how we look, how we feel, body weight, shape, confidence, energy, whatever it is you're striving for when it comes to your health and fitness and body, then we need to improve what we've previously done. We need to have a new standard. But if we don't identify the weeks and the months where we're off it, how can we possibly forward plan to improve our habits and behavior and choices in those months moving forward. And if you can identify these months when we are not as consistent and not eating well in particular, even if you improved your eating, training, or both in these months by like 5-10%, think of where you would be at the end of the year. Think of how you'd look, maybe how much less body fat you'd have, and more importantly, how much happier you would feel if you were on it a little bit more and trained a little bit harder, moved a little bit more, or made better food choices in those given months. Number 4, set realistic expectations. I think a huge reason why people develop an all or nothing mentality, they are just absolutely deluded with their initial expectations of how they believe they should look, how strong they should be, how fit they should be in relation to what they're actually willing to do, or more specifically, what their lifestyle actually involves. Because we can all say, I'm going to be in great shape, I'm going to be fit, I'm going to be strong, I'm going to break these PBs. But if your week-to-week calendar, how you live, the choices you make, and your environment isn't aligned to that expectation, then you are going to be continually disappointed. But more specifically, having such an unrealistic expectation that is a yardstick, just maybe a step too far, from my experience, prevents people from even starting a journey, or is an excuse of why people don't implement on certain weeks and months. They use it as an excuse. Well, okay, well, that's my goal. My week this week isn't really aligned to that. So you know what? Fuck it. I'm better off doing nothing. And then when I have a perfect week or a perfect 4 or 8, 12-week period, then I'm going to up my game again with my training, eat better, sleep better, all these things that are going to meet that goal. When the truth is, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you're a successful entrepreneur and business owner, it's very, very hard to find a clean block of time where you don't have nothing on, you don't have a challenge, you don't have other people to think about, you don't have travel, you don't have to eat out. It's just totally deluded, okay? So if you want to remove this all or nothing approach and mentality from your DNA, be more realistic with your expectations. Lower the bar a little bit, because how you're going to build confidence is setting an expectation and then following through on that with what you do, the choices you make, how hard you train, and how much you move. When you can consistently set an expectation on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis and meet that, however small, you'll develop confidence and you'll naturally hardwire into your mind that you're a consistent person. The word off it will not be part of your vocabulary again. I would rather have a client set a lower expectation every single month, but hit it for 12 months of the year, than someone who sets this ambitious, really out there goal for a month, 2 months, maybe hits it, but has had to literally adapt their lifestyle that much that the moment they hit that goal, because it wasn't sustainable, falling backwards or worse is inevitable. The person who can stay consistently on it over a 12-month period, even if they're only improving by sort of 2 to 5%, is going to look, feel, and perform better across a whole calendar year than the person who hits goals in short bursts but then goes missing for a month or two. And if you're a high performer, I don't believe in your heart you want to do that, because how you look and feel, as I've said many times before, impacts who you bring to your business, who you bring to your relationships, and the father or mother you bring to your role model behavior for your children. Number 5, if we're trying to lose the all or nothing mentality, you have to have a minimum non-negotiable set of standards in every area of health. I said this to a client the other day on a phone call who, like many of our clients, struggle with not doing things perfect. So because he can't do something perfect, he maybe doesn't do anything at all, or just has these periods of short-term inconsistency. the problem is not having a minimum non-negotiable set of standards in all the key areas of health, which is sleep, water, movement, training and food. Or if you want to break it down even simply, more specifically to do with training and food, right? You need to have a minimum set of non-negotiable standards if we're trying to shake off this all or nothing approach. For example, if in an ideal scenario within your week, you love training 4 times a week for an hour, getting 70,000 steps in across your week, eating off your diet plan 6 days a week, then maybe having a little bit of flexibility on one of your days. If that's an ideal best case scenario and an optimal high standard, you must have a minimum non-negotiable set of standards when your calendar, your lifestyle, professionally and personally, doesn't allow for that. So for example, instead of doing 4 one-hour sessions, a minimum non-negotiable standard, like I shared with my client the other day, is doing 4 20-minute sessions instead of an hour. Setting a timer on your phone as if it was a work appointment to yourself, going in there, doing as much as you can, leaving after 20 minutes. Less but better, and less but with high quality beats doing nothing. And I don't believe anyone is that busy within 168 hours in a week, minus sleep, minus other commitments, that they cannot train for 3 to 4 20 minutes a week. It's absolute nonsense. And if someone is not willing to do that, for me, I really question that person's value on health and how committed they are to their words of whether or not, when they say they want to change. Same with food. Again, I'm yet to coach anyone, and bearing in mind we've had some unbelievable transformations from entrepreneurs and business owners, in particular the last 6 years, but across my sort of nearly 2 decades of coaching now, I'm yet to coach anyone who can stick to the same diet plan every week of every month. Why? Because I don't know anybody who wants to eat the same food at the weekends. I don't know anybody, or I don't coach anybody who doesn't eat out at restaurants, doesn't go on holiday, doesn't have birthdays to celebrate, doesn't want to eat something particularly tasty that someone else has cooked. So you need to have a minimum non-negotiable set of standards, especially if you've got weeks that throw you curveballs where you're living out of hotels like many of our clients. You've just got different choices with your food that are outside the norm. Minimum non-negotiable set of standards for me, especially when it comes to your food, is just focus on habits and principle. So even if you couldn't track your calories or follow a perfect meal plan, can you simply have a 3-principle guideline when you're eating your food wherever you are, which is make sure that you're eating 2 palmfuls of protein every time you eat, minimize added sugar, and make sure that everything on your plate is real food. Irrelevant of food volume and the minor specifics, can you just focus on these 3 principles if there were certain things that took out of your control and you couldn't prep your food, or you couldn't control who prepped your food? Don't stress about that, but still have minimum set of standards, and no matter where you are in the world, it doesn't hold back the health and the body you want. Okay, and you can go through all these other areas, your sleep, your water, with the same principle. Number 6, this is something that we bore our clients to death with over and over and over again. If you want to lose the all or nothing mentality forever, plan your week better. Your priorities aren't revealed by what you say they are, they're revealed by what you do. And I can take one glance at a client's calendar and it reveals to me where they're committed in their life, what they value most, and also what they don't value. So if you are someone who is trying to remove these weeks and months where you are off it, on these weeks and months when you are habitually off it, make sure that on these weeks in particular, you plan methodically the minimum non-negotiable standards and inputs to do with your training, your movement, your food, and sleep, if you want to go a step further. Why? What gets scheduled gets done, or as a bare minimum is more likely to get done. Whereas if we are relying on willpower to get our training in, eat good food on the months and the weeks that are testing us more, maybe we've got even more work demands, family commitments, travel commitments, then we are going to rely on whether or not we are motivated at that given point to get the session in, eat the healthy food. And in particular with food, if you're not forward planning your food on where you're going to be, the choices you have available and the environments you're in, you are going to be reliant on, your food choices are going to be reliant on how you feel in that given moment as to whether or not you eat healthy. So for example, most people overeat when they're stressed, they're tired, they're bored, lonely, anxious. So if you aren't forward planning your environment when you are in situations where these emotions are surfacing, you're going to eat your feelings in those given moments. Whereas if you can forward plan as a result of planning your week better, the potential challenges and curveballs and options you have available, you're far more likely to make a better food choice that is aligned to the body you want and doesn't contradict the intention of never being off it. Because I don't believe anyone kicks off the year when they set their New Year's goals in January to be off it through choice across a calendar year. Number 7, expect curveballs. If you can expect challenges, curveballs, last minute changes, then you're not going to be reactive with your choices, especially when it comes to food. And you are more likely to have another option in place or a better choice in place if something doesn't go to plan. So for example, the amount of weeks and months in the last year where I'd intended to train for a certain time, for a certain duration, and then something cropped up that was out of my control and I just had to get it done, and it affected my training duration and maybe what I intended to train. But because I've normalized curveballs and challenges, I didn't panic, and I just made sure that I reverted to my minimum non-negotiable set of standards, which is doing something but of high quality, even if it's not as long, and what I initially intended is still better than doing nothing. And the same with food. There are going to be occasions where you intended to eat something on the go. It might have been a grab and go eat food place. It could be Pret, could be a supermarket. And you go in there and what you intended to buy wasn't available. It is what it is. Just look at the next best option. You know, a great question to ask yourself is, if you ever have a curveball, what would someone 10 times healthier, in better shape, do, choose, or say in this current situation? What would they choose? What would they eat? What would they say? And then copy the answer to that question. Because if someone's in shape and demonstrate they've been in shape for a period of decades, not just weeks and months, they've not done that by chance. And they've not done that by having periods where they've had to be very tactful with their choices, where they didn't have the perfect scenario, especially when it comes to food. Number 8, forget perfection, focus on consistent small progress. The amount of people who call themselves a perfectionist, and I was this guy for decades, not even just a few years, is staggering. Yes, of course, there's nothing wrong with having exceptional standards and trying to be perfect with certain things. And I do too. But the amount of people who absolutely bullshit themselves and call themselves a perfectionist, and then I look at their shape, look at their body weight, and look at the way they conduct themselves with health, it's fucking nonsense. If you are a self-labeled perfectionist and you look like shit and you're not consistent, you're talking absolute bullshit. It's impossible to be a perfectionist and then be out of shape. It's totally contradicting message. And I really believe that a lot of people who call themselves perfectionists in the world of health and fitness in particular, it's like a comforting word that normalizes mediocrity if they aren't doing something perfect. It sort of gives them a sense of certainty and comfort that, well, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm not going to commit to that training program or commit to that food program because I can't do it perfect because I'm a perfectionist. It's actually the opposite. For me, I think perfectionism in many areas, but especially with health and fitness, is lazy, it's procrastination, it's a form of insecurity. And again, there's no judgment because I've been this guy in the past. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because the problem, if you label yourself as a perfectionist as well, is it's mentally exhausting. It's mentally exhausting because the moment something goes wrong with training, food, movement, or life, you can fold, and then the fuck it mentality comes in, which is usually followed by ill-disciplined behavior. And I just don't believe, if you're a genuine perfectionist, that you'd have these bouts of repeated lack of discipline, especially when it comes to food. So focus on consistent small progress. Stack the small wins up. Then the next one is practice self-worth. What do I mean by that? When we are off it, or when you are off it maybe, 99% of the time it's because you are prioritizing someone else's needs too much at the expense of your own. Because if you haven't made time for your training, or made time to eat healthy food, or made time to look after your health and wellness, then you're clearly focusing your attention and time somewhere and more likely on someone else, which is fine. I totally appreciate if you're listening to this and watching this, that you have mouths to feed within your family, people within your company to look after and provide opportunity for, clients to serve. But if we are doing that over and over again at the expense of finding time for us, it's actually a form of self-sabotage, in my opinion. And eventually that'll bite you in the ass with how you actually want to feel. So I am someone that will run through absolute fire for my clients, for my now fiance, for my friends, my family, but I serve myself first. If I was to show you my calendar, the first thing I do 6 mornings a week minimum is make sure that I've got time for my workout, my movement if it's a training day, before I serve anyone else. Because the more I fill my own cup up, the more I can give. The more energy I have, which is created by what I do, how I live, how I train, and how I eat, the more I can bring to my business, my family, my relationships. Okay? So practice self-worth by making sure that your calendar is full every single week of time for you, even if it is less time. But don't go into a week or a day, as I say to my clients, without knowing when I'm going to train, when I'm going to move, and when I'm going to eat. It just prevents reactive behavior. Number 10. This is what people don't do enough, and I've been guilty of this too. Make sure you celebrate smaller wins. Repeat that. It's really important. Make sure you celebrate smaller wins. From my experience, people who struggle with the all or nothing mentality, unless they are focusing on and achieving these big, huge, euphoric, but very intermittent big goals, then anything else from that is boring, or it's boring. It doesn't excite them. It doesn't inspire them. But the reality is, you are going to build so much more confidence and condition yourself as a consistent, healthy person by stacking up smaller wins on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Honestly, nothing builds confidence more than literally stacking up these smaller wins with your training, your movement, your food, how you manage you, day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month. There's nothing more powerful. I mean, one of the things we do inside our coaching service, inside Built to Last, Every single client has a daily checklist simplifying what they need to do with their training, the movement, food, any of the health markers and habits. So by the end of that day, when they've ticked them off, they feel good. It's been scientifically proven that you just naturally have this dopamine hit when you tick off something you said were going to do. Okay, so I really encourage you to celebrate the smaller wins, especially process-led wins and habits, because the truth is, outcome goals are important, but they're going to be at the end of periods of day. So they're going to be at the end of periods of weeks, and in particular months, and maybe even at the calendar year. And you have to wait a long, long time to celebrate wins of that magnitude. Whereas if you can celebrate small process-led wins and habits, you're going to be celebrating wins all the time. So naturally, you're going to associate more pleasure with the journey in pursuit of those longer-term outcome-based goals. But people don't do it enough. So take time. At the end of the day, whether it's journaling or just simply self-acknowledging when you've ticked something off, when you've had a great session, when, for example, you may have had a training session that you didn't really want to do, but then you followed through and did it. Give yourself a pat on the back for that, because that is where the growth is made. When you do when you follow through and do what you said you would do, even when you didn't want to do it, because you're going to have weeks and months where you don't want to train, you don't want to eat as healthy. And these are the things that really shift the needle and create personal growth and physical change. Not the days and the weeks and the sessions when conditions are perfect, you've got no curveballs, you've slept well, you've got a clean calendar. Okay, these are few and far between. So stack up the small wins on the other days and weeks. Last couple now. A big problem with the all or nothing mentality, or people who struggle with an all or nothing mentality, is they're trying to train and eat like they did in their late teens and 20s. It doesn't work. And if you're listening to this and you are late 30s, 40s, 50s, or maybe even younger or older, and you're still not where you want to be, and when you look yourself in the mirror, you don't like what you see, then it's likely because you have an outdated system that's managing your training, your movement, and your food. The amount of people that come to us that are still trying to train like they did in their 20s, and what I mean by that is the fucking bro splits, 6-day splits, chest day, back day, arm day. Unless your lifestyle is conducive to that, then it's a broken system. If you run a business and you weren't getting the results you wanted, you would never keep implementing that system. You'd make a change, whether it's to do with your marketing, your sales, your team, your admin, whatever it is, you'd make a change. It's the same principle when it comes to looking after your body. Your body is an asset, and you have to manage that with a system that's either going to grow and improve and be robust, or it's going to fold and break. And if we're trying to break the pattern of this all or nothing approach and violate and remove this yo-yoing once and for all, then we need a better system that is sustainable and consistent. And then when it comes to food, the amount of people that reach out to me and or when they first kick off with us, oh, do I get a diet plan? Yes, you do, but we're going to teach you how to eat off a diet plan, because that's what's going to help you in the real world. But the amount of people that are looking for this one way to manage food, this magic diet plan, is fucking staggering. And having been in shape for 3 decades, there is not one fixed way, if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, that's going to help you manage your food. How can I say that with so much certainty? Because even if I was to prescribe you a diet plan now, you're going to have multiple weekends and holidays and travel circumstances where you can't stick to that diet plan. So that one way doesn't work, especially the diet plan that you're still trying to stick to that worked in your 20s. Okay? It's not going to work. So we need a different, more upgraded system to manage training and food, because the best meal plan, the best training plan is the one you stick to. And that's going to be different for you. It's going to be different for your friend, your business colleague. Why? Because you have different relationships, different work hours, different emotions, different preferences, different curveballs, different standards, different expectations. So that's going to change as you evolve, as you age. So just make sure that your training and food system is aligned to your expectation and is complementary to your week-to-week calendar and your personal, professional, and social lifestyle. And if you are going around in circles at the time listening to this podcast and you don't know where to start and you're a business owner still stuck, reach out to me. We can put an end to this struggle once and for all. Lastly, I know I talk about this on probably I'd say every podcast at some point, whether it's a solo or with a guest. I talk about environment over and over again. But I really believe if you struggle with consistency, adherence, basically following through on your plans, and you are scratching your head why, one of the most powerful things you can do to genuinely get rid of this all or nothing mentality once and for all is surround yourself in an environment where being off it is simply not an option. When you are surrounded by people in a peer group, in an environment where the common mentality is simply never been off it with food, never been off it with training, never been off it with health, consciously and subconsciously, you will do the session when you don't want to. You'll eat better, even if you don't want to, more frequently than not eating well and not getting your session in. It's one of the reasons we work so hard inside Built to Last to create the virtual community that we have and the in-person events that we put on. Because for me, one of the most pivotal things in long-term behavior change, and remember, how we look is down to how we behave and the choices we make, is having an environment that supports that new identity. Otherwise, we will continually revert back to the habits and the choices that created that sort of inconsistent approach and fluctuations in body shape that have been maybe controlling us for a number of years. So if you're really stuck, make sure you surround yourself in an environment where people are just never off it. And that might be hard to find, I appreciate that, but there are many different options out there, that can help you for sure. Of course, I'm going to be biased and say my Built to Last community is paramount to solving the all or nothing mentality. The amount of people that have joined us who were all or nothing, especially with health and fitness, they'd maybe got in great shape before and then gone backwards, or knew they were capable of more, would be perfect, they're not on it, is staggering. But with the environment we've created, I don't let the standard drop, the team don't let the standard drop, and what's even more refreshing to see the last few years, our best clients don't let the standard drop. So even the people that have struggled a little bit more than others, day by day, week by month, week by week, month by month, they just naturally upgrade their standards, their way of thinking, and more importantly, what they do. Because remember, you're the byproduct of what you do, not what you say you'll do. So I know I went into a lot more context there than maybe I usually would, but I think this is such a powerful subject for me, and I really believe it is one of the main things that prevents people from looking how they want to, and by default affects how they feel. And if you're stuck and the all or nothing mentality has controlled you for a period of months or more likely years, then it's a choice to keep labeling yourself and staying as that person. So if you want to put an end to your all or nothing mentality once and for all, go through that list again. Even if you implemented half of them, or even the core 3, I guarantee you would be more consistent. And as I said just a second ago, if you need help removing this all or nothing mentality once and for all, please reach out to me, my team, and we can put an end to that once and for all. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.